Thank you, gentlemen. This is rumor control. Here are the facts.
But kids, though, I guess people question the different baby mothers. That's
why do people question that? I mean, because it's like that's a Eurocentric concept when you think about the ideas of like you're supposed to have this one person for the rest of your life, and really that's just a classified property when you think about it. I mean, like when you go into that mindset, if we really talking that talk, like just the idea that a man should have one woman, we shouldn't have anything. I have no ownership over this person. Like if we're really talking about how we coexist and how we populate, it's about what exchange can we create together. So I've never really subscribed to that mentality.
Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about polyandry. I think is really more about it. Now, the title of this show, of course, is Will Women Share Alphas? And today's topic is going to be me sort of bouncing off a common manosphere, red pill, whatever, maxim. And if you've been around, if you've read my work, if you've read Pook, if you've been around the sort of men's circles, men's spheres, I don't even really want to call it the manosphere these days, you've probably heard this maxim before, which is women will readily share an alpha rather than be saddled with a faithful beta. Now, I'm paraphrasing a quote from Pook from way back, I think about 2003, 2004 on the So Suave forums. That's where that originated from. So when you hear that, that's where that came from. And then it's sort of been adopted and sort of rehashed or retold several times. But the truth of the matter is this, is that women will share a quote unquote high value man rather than be saddled with a faithful beta. And for a lot of guys, that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, especially for guys who are sold on the idea that human beings, the human race is a monogamous race, that we are one man, one woman, and that's how it always works. And I'm going to dig into that a little bit today too. But just what we just watched here just a moment ago is Nick Cannon, and you probably are familiar with Nick Cannon. I pulled this from a Candace Owens show, and no, I'm not going to beat up on Candace today. I mean, maybe just a touch, but she was doing a breakdown of this, and I kind of wanted to throw out some of the common tropes that I see right now as we're sort of leaning over into polyandry. Now, I've done polyamory, polygamy, however you'd like to say it. In this case, we're just going to be, let's just break it down. It is one man and many women. And in our evolutionary past, hasn't been uncommon. If you go back and you look even in the Old Testament, right? I mean, that marriage was basically one patriarch with maybe a wife, maybe two, and then concubines or maidservants, if that makes you feel better. So we can go back and look at, and I should say this, it's not just sort of this Eurocentric idea when it comes to monogamy. We'll talk about that a little bit today too. This is really kind of a bastardization and a really misunderstanding of what monogamy really is. So I'm gonna rewind a little bit here. I wanted to start with Nick Cannon. Now, if you're not familiar with Nick Cannon, he has a radio show right now. He's also been an actor. He was married to Mariah Carey for a while, and Nick is known mostly for having several children with several women. And that's what he was being addressed about on this show that I just showed you a second ago. And so I'm just going to run down just to give you an idea here of how prolific, how prolific Mr. Cannon has been. Originally, he was married to Mariah Carey from 2008 to 2016. She's the mother of twins, Monroe and Moroccan Scott. Okay, those are the names. He was then his girlfriend. I don't know if he's married to her. No, he's not. His then girlfriend is the mother of Golden Sagan and Powerful Queen. Okay. And then, hey man, if Elon Musk can name his kid like, a number and some letters, I suppose you can name your kid Powerful Queen. Abba de la Rosa is his current partner and is the mother of twins born on June 14th of this year. Congratulations. And then, of course, there was Alyssa Scott, a model who appeared on Cannon's music game show Wild and Out. Wild and Out she gave birth on June 23rd of 2021 to Cannon's fourth child in the last year. So we've got, let's just see, just this year alone, twins born on June 14th, and then his fourth child born this year anyways, born on the 23rd of June of the same month. How convenient. And then let's see. So he's got, twins with Mariah Carey. There's two. He's got two with Brittany Bell. He's got, he's really good at twins. I don't know how this is. Twins with Abby De La Rosa. And then I just had the next one. So he is up to 7 children at this stage. So there you have it. That's the account for Nick Cannon. Now, again, this is not, I'm not tearing down Nick Cannon. I don't even know who the guy is. Honestly, I'm not that familiar with the whole thing, but I am familiar with Candace Owens, and I am familiar that this would be something that she would probably dig into. So I figured I would too. Now, the problem that you're going to see here in just a minute, because I'm going to play the rest of the Candace Owens clip, is this is sort of this, I want to say it's this war of memes or ideologies, you could say too, but like war of memes, war of what's the best idea? What's the best practice? What's the best philosophy? What's the best way to organize ourselves? In this case, we're going to be talking about intersexual dynamics. That's my wheelhouse. So that's what we're going to get into. Let me throw the rest of this on here so you guys can get an idea what we're talking about. Now, this was their, actually, let me back up just a touch here so we can pick up just the last tail end of this.
Think about it. I mean, like when you go into that mindset, if we really talking that talk, like just the idea that a man should have one woman, we shouldn't have anything. I have no ownership over this person. Like if we really talking about how we coexist and how we pop.
All right. So I don't know what his political ideology is. I don't know what his political stripe is or anything like that. But he's already using feminist language. So let's call that out when we see that. Okay. First of all, ownership is something that I have talked about before, when I was discussing, surnames and the now normalizing practice of women not taking the surname of the man that they are married to, or maybe in some cases, the guy taking her last name. I can talk to you about sort of the genetic legacy aspects of this, but I would suggest just simply going and watching that episode. It explains it a whole lot better. But the idea of ownership is something that is very, very uniquely associated with that. So it's like, oh, we don't own each other. We're not like, okay, this is not about ownership, but the impression is that we live in a patriarchal society, and therefore, if we're ever going to break or crush the tyranny of the patriarchy, then we've got to start breaking those practices. And how do we do that? Well, we instill in the minds of men and women, of course, that first of all, that there is a patriarchy. And then second of all, what are the practices? What are we hinting at? Right. So nobody owns anybody. And really that kind of comes back to egalitarianism, equalism, and really, social constructionism, of course, and then the blank slate is also a big part of that as well. So let's keep going.
It's about what exchange can we create together. So I've never really subscribed to that mentality.
That's interesting because I'm pretty sure if it's Nation of Islam that he is supporting or he's advocating for, if you want to talk about women being property, literally, when you have 10 wives and they're all a piece of property owned by the man, he might want to look into the other alternatives, is all I'm saying.
So that right there is a misunderstanding. Let me just call that one out too. Okay. So if I'm going to call out Nick, I'm also going to call out Candace here. As far as I know, and according to my good friend Abu American, who I believe only has 3 wives, he might have 4 by now. I'm not really sure. But I am well aware that in Muslim tradition, Muslim religion, you top out at 4 wives. I'm pretty sure that's the case. According to Abu America, according to Craig, he's told me that you can't have more than 4. and that's an option. That's optional. So let's throw that one out there really quickly. Not 10 wives is not on the menu. And the other thing that she's not going to address here, and I will, is that there is an expectation of responsibility for those 4 wives. And of course, in to their credit, in Islamic culture, men are inferred or implied in authority so that they can actually take responsibility for those wives. So let's keep that in mind right now, because I'm going to show you another clip here a little bit, in just a little bit, and we're going to dig into the polyamory, polygamy. I guess really, it's. I think we're really kind of leaning towards a female initiated or female primary version of polygamy, and you'll see what I mean here in just a moment. I've got another clip for you here, but I wanted to call that out because that's a common misperception. What you're seeing is this old order way of understanding this new order nonsense being interpreted by old order nonsense, or deliberate misinterpretations by that old order. Candace is definitely a representative of the old order. This is 20th century thinking for 21st century new order problems. And this is the only way anyone with old order memes, or like dying memes as their basis of their own ideology, that's their only frame of reference. So I'm just calling that out right here real quick. So let me throw this one up again, put her back in.
Has he ever heard of the Taliban? Because they actually have a very similar view of marriage.
What's the purpose of this?
You don't even have to go that deep. It's like, quit trying to make an excuse for you to be slutty. If you're going to go out and sleep with all these women and you just want to have a good time and you don't want to have responsibility, then just say it. Quit trying to make it white.
Sound educated. Yeah.
There's no educated way to say you're not successfully interacting in your children's life. There's no way in the world you could have 5 baby mamas and you are actively supporting all of those children.
Well, oddly enough, that's exactly the program when it comes to Islam. The reason why that's hard for, and by the way, the 2 other guys on there was, the first one was Brandon Tatum was the black gentleman, and then Michael Knowles is also, he's the guy who was on there, who's, talking about how he's making comparisons to the Taliban there. This guy is like, I believe he's PragerU. Let me look. Yeah, he's definitely PragerU. So that's that should tell you about where they're coming from and all of this. And it's let's all laugh and put the laugh track in the background there. But the difference between these two is that they just simply don't understand the others. They're both right for the wrong reason, and they're both wrong for the right reason. So let's go back to Nick Cannon here really quickly. When Nick talks about how this is a patriarch, like how monogamy is sort of like this Western culture. By the way, there's more to this video, but he explains how it's this it's Western culture, or it's patriarchy, or it's Eurocentrism. Okay, like monogamy or marriage, like one man, one woman, like was it socially enforced monogamy? And again, that's not something Dr. Jordan Peterson came up with. That's actually a sociological term. Socially enforced monogamy, meaning that the society encourages the formation of families with one man and one woman in a cis heterosexual arrangement, right? Have 2.5 kids and a golden retriever in the front yard, and now you've got the nuclear family. That is, you can make a case that is sort of a waspy white Anglo-Saxon pipe dream. And a lot of people have made that case in the past, but what you cannot make the case for is that monogamy is a Eurocentric concept, because monogamy, with respect to one man, one woman, or even just the idea of pair bonding and forming a family, is in no way Eurocentric. You can go to Asian cultures. You can go to feudal Japan, man. You can go to a lot of different, it's something that is a commonality amongst human beings across the planet. So it's not necessarily Eurocentric. And that I think is a big mistake. And it sounds according to the, woke culture right now, that sounds about right, but it's simply inaccurate. So I wanted to call that one out. Now, I'm not saying, again, we're gonna buffer this a little bit. I'm not saying that monogamy is the natural way for men and women to, come together and build families and everything else. Human beings are very much promiscuous. We are like every other animal in the animal kingdom. There are very few, by the way, animals in the animal kingdom that are that pair bond for life, that are truly monogamous, because monogamy tends to lead to stagnation. It leads to homogeneous, and that the fact that we can look in the genomic record right now, we can see that as far back as, say, like about 8,000 years ago, right around I believe it was the advent of agriculture. I could be wrong. Again, I'm not a historian here. I'm not a evolutionary biological historian here, but 8,000 years ago, 17 women reproduced for every one man. And as I'm fond of throwing out there today, every 1 in every 200 men on planet Earth is a direct DNA genetic descendant of Genghis Khan. Again, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, and again, don't make the naturalistic fallacy here, because I'm in no way trying to make that right now. And the naturalistic fallacy is this: that if something is natural, it must necessarily be right. And so when we get into these conflicts between, well, what's the natural state of humans? Are we naturally monogamous? Because there's a lot of evidence that shows that we are, that a lot of guys, want to get with one girl and they want to have babies, and they tend to pair bond in most cases, ideally speaking, for life. But then you can also make the case that human beings are promiscuous. And that promiscuity also leads to cuckoldry, and it also leads to sexual strategies that encourage cuckoldry. I have made the argument on several of my shows that we will even legislate for women's sexual strategy above that of men's. In a gynocentric social order, that's exactly what we do. And as we get into further and further into the 21st century, and we watch marriage rates plummet, and concurrently we see divorce rates plummet as well, because you ain't getting married, you ain't getting divorced. We can also look at stats for baby mamas, and we can also look for stats for that we usually, I would say would take you some doing, would take some effort in the past, but you can find out that 42% of births in the United States today are born out of wedlock. If you go in, you do that by demographic, particularly in the Black community right now, it's something like 70%. So on the average, the mean average is 42, but if you take that and you break it down by demographic, and then of course you can go by age and age cohorts and things like that too. Now, again, not necessarily calling attention out to anybody. It's not this. Again, this is just observation here, but the fact still remains: the conflict, I should say, remains. Are we naturally monogamous, or are we naturally promiscuous? And I would argue both. And I have read a lot of evolutionary psychologists, evobio researchers say pretty much the same thing. There's a fantastic book, by the way, if you haven't read it, and it's a little bit, it's kind of heavy stuff, but it's a book by Dr. Tim Burkhead, who wrote. It's called Promiscuity. It's a fantastic book, and it breaks down. If you're kind of like a evo psych wonk or a evo bio wonk when it comes to intersexual dynamics, that's your book. You will really enjoy that one. But it breaks down the stats, and not just for human beings, but just in animal kingdom in general. And that's why I say, true monogamy is something of a novelty, let's just say, in the animal kingdom. Being promiscuous tends to lead to, let's say, better gene selection, but in some cases it can. But we got to talk about this in terms of human beings at this stage. And I think what's happened now, and I made this case in my essay here called The New Polyandry, which I'm going to link here for you. I made this case is that we are in the 21st century leaning towards a female-centric, female-initiated polygamy, or polygyny, I guess so. So that's one man and many women. But in this case, it's not a patriarch. It's not Father Abraham, right? It's not a patriarch. It's not a player. It's not Hugh Hefner who's initiating it. It's women themselves. Because we've gotten to the point right now where women have been so empowered and control so much of our political process, our social process, our psychological process, and our religious process, our religious mores, let's just say, that the primary predominant sexual strategy that defines our societies, at least Western societies in this age, is promiscuity. And as a result, polygyny on the part of women. This is their initiation. That's why I titled today's show, Do Women Share Men? You know, are we headed for that? And I would argue yes. I was run up the flagpole as far back as 2016 or 2017 when I was drawing attention to this new push for polyamory. And that's a nice cutesy way of saying, what was the other one? The other euphemism was alternative relationship styles. And in several states, I want to say in the East Coast states, I want to say it's maybe New Hampshire or something like that, they're recognizing thruples now, which is like, you know, a threesome, let's just say, a married threesome. So now we've gone from just traditional marriage to same-sex marriage. And from there, we've gone and redefined it as a throuple. And we're in the process of acknowledging sort of multiple partner arrangements, alternative relationship lifestyles. And I think, again, those are little cutesy euphemisms for poly. And we have to look at why is this so popular right now? And the reason why it's so popular is because we have made marriage and we have made socially enforced monogamy the devil. We have made it clearly. Here we have Nick Cannon doing exactly this. But he's got kids, he's got money, he can take care of those kids. Yeah, by all definition, Nick Cannon is definitely an alpha, right? I mean, look who he's banging and look who he's reproduced with. He's clearly an alpha. He's got a lot of money. He's a high value guy. He gets to make people will listen to him. They will listen to him when he says monogamy is Eurocentric. But what's the operative state here? What's the latent purpose of this? And the latent purpose of this is encouraging a new way of forming relationships that are temporary enough to maybe produce a child and to hold that man accountable, hopefully, enough to get child support out of him. If you've read my fourth book, which is The Rational Male Religion, one of the quotes in there, one of the guys I quote in there is Dalrock, quite a bit, actually. I dedicated the book to Dalrock. And Dalrock was I won't say a religious blogger, but he was sort of in the Christo manosphere, Christian red pill, let's just say. And he's one of the few guys I really think who got it. He hasn't written in quite a while, but one of the observations he made as far back as like 2015, I think it was, is he mentioned this. He says, we have moved from a way of raising children that used to be based on marriage to one that is based on child support. So it's not so much about, are the parents married? It's not so much about, have they formed a solid relationship between the two of them? Is there a conventionally masculine father and a conventionally feminine mother? It used to be prior to the sexual revolution, prior to hormonal birth control, we used to have social stigmas, let's just say, for a woman who was a single mommy who got knocked up, and it would bring shame upon the family. In some cases, I guess, depending on the culture and the religion, it might still do a little bit. But we've replaced that by making single mothers, electively single mothers, superheroes, because they're doing it all. They're both the masculine influence and the feminine influence, and they don't. I think this is one of the greatest crimes we have ever perpetrated on women in the history of humanity, quite honestly. But certainly in Western societies, is that we have sold women on the idea that men are so useless that women can be better men than men. In a lot of different arenas, and the one I'm focusing on right now is raising children. I think that's a damn shame, because statistically speaking, we know that women by themselves raise really shitty kids. Sorry to say that, but go read The Boy Crisis by Dr. Warren Farrell, and you'll understand the stats behind that. In fact, single fathers raise better children than single mothers. You might think that that's a bold statement, or I'm being a misogynist or whatever, but the stats don't lie. Go read The Boy Crisis. There's all kinds of information about this. So I'm going to leave that at that. But what we're doing right now is we're leaning into, because we have given women the priority when it comes to sexual strategies in Western cultures, because of that, we're leaning towards a society that prioritizes alpha male, high value men, right? That's all we talk about in the manosphere. How do you be a high value man? How do I be the guy who's going to get the girls, and I'm going to be a success, and I'm going to have a lot of money, and I'm going to drive a nice car, and I have power, right? I have power to direct my life where I want it to go. How do I get to be that guy? Well, women want to know too. They're very enthusiastic about that because they want access to those high value guys. So when we say, beauty is common, and beauty, by the way, is perishable. Women's sexual agency is perishable, but high value men are very, very rare. In fact, even the perception of high value men makes them even more rare because only those guys will do. No woman wants to settle. And as I said before, the Pook quote, women would rather share a high value man, a high value alpha, than be saddled with a faithful loser, a faithful beta. It's that dutifulness, that beta. They're not saying that guy is a bad. I'm not saying you're a bad guy. Again, we're not making judgment calls here. I'm just saying that she would much rather hook up, and why not? It seems practical. It seems logistical, right? It seems pragmatic. What woman wouldn't want to get with a guy? What woman would want to settle for less than the best? Particularly when investing in that guy emotionally, with love or with children or with whatever, emotionally into that guy and wanting to form a family with that guy, especially when that is a lifelong security prospect for women. Of course I do. And now they're in a position right now, we've talked about this a lot, that they can take their time with it, or at least they believe that they can take their time with it. This also goes back to the idea of the biological clock, which I've sort of had a little bit of back and forth with a few people in my peer groups, let's just say. One of the reasons why the biological clock coincides with women's epiphany phase is because they know that the clock, it's not the biological clock, it's the fact that they come to the acknowledgement that the party's almost over, that they can't compete with their 33-year-old self, can't compete with their 23-year-old self. Well, and so how do we modify society? How do we change society? It's all a social construct, right? So how do we reconstruct all of this? Well, the obvious social convention is to call men infantile and shame them for not participating or cooperating with women's sexual strategies. Well, the guys who will cooperate are the guys that they don't want to have anything to do with it. They want the guy who has been on his game, and they want the guy who is a high value man. And that takes time to mature into. You're not born a high value man. You have to sort of work your way into that. It takes longer for men to mature into who they're going to be and their peak sexual market value than it does for women. And on some level of consciousness, women understand that. So we've got this, and we've got a society that's sort of circling the drain here with respect to like fertility rates and marriage rates for sure. And the idea of old school marriage is just, it's no longer functional. It's no longer tenable. So what is? So if women don't want to get with the guy and they don't have to get with the blue pill guy, they don't have to get with the beta, the dutiful beta. They don't have to get with that guy. The perception is that they deserve nothing less than the highest value man. There are several very successful channels in the quote unquote manosphere that have drawn attention to this quite successfully. And you know who I'm talking about, and you know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to leave it at that. However, we see this daily. Delusional women. If you go and you look at, if you go and you type in delusional women in the search engine, why would you do so? Why? But what in the search engine for YouTube, that's a very popular tag. Delusional women. You put women's unrealistic expectations. Women have unrealistic expectations. They want a guy who's 6 foot tall, and they want him to have a 6-pack abs, and they want him to make 6-figure income, and they want him to have a 600 horsepower car and at least over a 6-inch wang. I don't know. But all that, the 666, right? But not all guys have that. And the likelihood of finding that is even more delusional, I think. But it's a very common hash. So, but why is that? Well, because women believe that they have the hubristic belief that they deserve the best without having to really merit it. I was talking about respect about 2 days ago now, and that they believe that they deserve that. Remember, women just are and men must become. Well, if women just are, then the idea that the best of the best should just drop in their lap because they just are is a pretty, if it's not like cognitively acknowledged, it's certainly something that's sort of running as a subroutine in the background noise in a woman's subconscious. And I'm going to show you why this is here in just a second, but there's a mechanic to this. There is, we still can't remove the social conventions from the actual biological facts, right? It's how do we feel about this, and how can we make this work for us, and how can we change the game to work better for women, while at the same time trying to work from within a biological evolutionary framework that conflicts and confounds that all the time. So we're going to get into that right now. This video is from 2018. I don't think it was a documentary, but there used to be this channel called The Grapevine. I did an essay on this when this came out, and this is part 2 of this. And this is just a very short clip, but this sort of describes what I was saying was going to happen in 2021, or going forward into the 21st century here. But I wrote an essay called "The New Polyandry." I will link it in the description here so you guys can read the whole thing in detail. I don't know who these people are, but I do like what this woman has to say. So I'm going to throw this one in here real quick.
That doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I'll say this, I think men low-key are uncomfortable, like Valerian said, being held to the same scrutiny that women are held for beauty when it comes to money, because most men are not rich. And reality is, in the animal kingdom, females typically do the choosing. Humans, women get chose. We have patriarchy to thank for that. And the truth about monogamy is, and the truth about monogamy is even made to benefit men. Right. The truth is, polyandry and polygamy benefits women. Polyandry benefits women outside of the context of a patriarchy. Polygamy benefits women because then the Kobe Bryants of the world get to have multiple wives and concubines. So all the women get a man. The issue is broke men don't get women. So monogamy is the way that we can ensure that average Joes get to get married too. So the truth is,
all right. So I'm going to stop it at that. There's actually a lot more to this, and I'm trying to keep today's show as short and sweet as possible. Again, this is from my 2018 or 2019? 2018. Yeah, 2018 essay, "The New Polyandry." Now, I saw this coming, and I made a big stink about it back then. And of course, everybody said I was overreacting. You're a reactionary, Rollo. The poly will never go mainstream. And here we are. We're already making legislation for it. We're calling it out. There is not, I don't think there's a guy in the manosphere who would disagree with this assessment, is that because we have empowered women socially, societally, monetarily, educationally, you name the arena, name the social arena, and we have elevated women to, we've basically given away the farm. It's almost to the point where we have made so many special dispensations for women that again, when I was talking about respect last Sunday, we just hand it away. We just give it away. And what is cheaply had is cheaply valued. And so what I'm looking at right now, and this is what the observations I made back in 2018, was that we were going to head for a social intersexual arrangement between men and women, where women simply do not need blue pill, beta male men anymore. So much so that women hate beta males so much that they will work soul crushing jobs and go to, 4 to 8 year colleges learning something that probably will never use in their actual careers. But they would rather do that under the impression that it will save them from having to marry or having to get with a guy that they wouldn't want to get with in the first place. Why is it that women don't want your last name? Because on some level of consciousness, she realizes that you aren't the best she can do. She doesn't want your shitty last name, and she doesn't want your shitty genetics. But if she's forced into that, she will take that. Now, she's no longer forced into that. And we just saw this right here. And I think that this girl, besides the patriarchy part, I think is 100% correct. And that's where we're headed. Women today do not need beta males. They do not need blue pill guys. You want to know why there are so many guys in the GSS study, which happened at the same time this was happening here? the 18 to 24 cohort, they're not having sex. Those guys are simply not having sex. But women are. And it's dropped a little bit. I got to be honest, but like not nearly as much as men. Not from the 18 to 24, 18 to 29 cohort. Those guys are the 80%ers, the what we call the beta males, the guys who have less sexual opportunity. Those guys are not getting laid. Women are, but men are not. So who are these women getting laid with? Now, I remember reading the articles at the time talking about how women are just going for older guys, right? They're going for guys who are more mature. They're going for guys who have more money and have more security. And it's like maybe maybe a little bit, but those guys are very few and far between. So that can't be the only reason, or if it is, it's a very ancillary reason, right? It's a side reason. No, they're getting with alpha males. They're sharing alpha males. They're doing exactly what Pook called out way back in 2004. Women would rather share an alpha than be saddled with a beta. And now we've reached a point societally and socioeconomically certainly in Western cultures, where women don't have to do that anymore. They don't have to. They can go to college every day. Every girl who's 18 years old will say, I make my own money. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to be the CEO of my life. I don't want to have to answer to a guy. I don't want to have to be subservient. I don't want to have, it's all patriarchy, right? It's not about ownership. Well, of course it's not about ownership to Nick Cannon. Nick Cannon's got more money than God. He can go and he's nailing Mariah Carey for Christ's sake. So yeah, I'm sure it's not about ownership because he doesn't want to be owned, right? Well, because he's being shared by, at least 4 chicks. He's got 7 kids as a result of that. What that seems to me is like old school polygamy, isn't it? That Father Abraham is the patriarch of the tribes of Israel, right? Well, yeah, your offspring will be more numerous than the stars. Well, Nick Cave is working on it. Genghis Khan certainly did a good job at that. But again, women, and again, it's not necessarily because of women's choice. And that's one part I have to disagree a little bit with about this young lady here. It's not necessarily always about the choice. Like women are the selectors, but patriarchy and really socially enforced monogamy has been a socially buffering social dynamic for a very long time now. And if you go and you look at countries or cultures where polygamy has been the norm, those tend to be more war-torn countries that are more predisposed to civil unrest. Well, why is that? It's very easy to figure out. You got 4 guys who are 18 years old, and you got 5 guys who are 18 years old. One of those guys has 4 wives. If a guy has 4 wives, means that 3 other guys don't have wives. And if marriage is the only way you can get laid, or the only appropriate way to get laid, well, then you're kind of ass out. You're not going to reproduce. That is that's an existential crisis for men on a genetic level. I refer to this quite a bit in my work, and I've said this before on this show lots of times. There is what I call the reproductive problem. What that means is, how do I reproduce? That's what it really boils down to. Women have that and men have that. And if you're in a polygamous society, and one guy has access to 4 women or 10 women, that means 9 other guys don't get any ass. Now, 9 guys aren't going to reproduce. That one dude is, because he's got all the resources, he's got all the territory, he's got all the chicks. High value men, powerful men throughout history have always had those 3 things. They've had resources, lots and lots of resources. That could be money. That could be, goats, cattle, whatever it was in the past. They have territory or access to territory. Of course, how do they get the resources? You have to have the territory. You've got to be able to expand your region. And then they have exclusive access to harems. So whether that's the emperor in the Forbidden City, or that's the tribal chieftain in the rainforest who, walls off or fences off the girls in one area, whatever it is, like you can find analogies of this throughout. It's cross-cultural and has nothing to do with Eurocentrism, has nothing to do with that whatsoever. It's just, that's what powerful men have had. And now here in 2021, we're seeing this again. Only now we're seeing it as a result of unfettered hypergamy. and female, what I've called fempowerment, but it's female empowerment. So when you say, okay, ladies, we're going to make your sexual strategy, hypergamy, we're going to make that the dominant social dynamic of this century. We're going to base our laws on this. We're going to base our culture on this. We're going to base our memes on this. We're going to base our religion on this. That whatever mama wants, mama gets. That's more or less it. And what mama wants is alpha males. What mama wants is high value man. And she doesn't want anything else. And if you're a low value guy, you better know your place. In fact, that I would argue is what's being legislated for right now. Beta men should never approach any woman whatsoever because he should know his place. You want to know why, ladies? You want to know why guys don't approach you? I say, oh, they're afraid. They're terrified that they're going to get me too. Well, yeah, that's definitely part of it. But you've essentially raised a generation and a half, really, of guys who think the juice is not worth the squeeze. They're not going to. It's a risk to cost to risk or a cost to reward proposition for sure. But essentially, the latent purpose behind like reinforcing that has been to tell these guys, if you're a beta, don't come up to me, don't talk to me, don't approach me, don't try to be someone you're not. I'm only interested in those alphas, and you know what? There's so few of them. I'm willing to share those guys, and I love it when I'm listening to these women and especially like on Myron and Fresh on Fresh and Fit. Like, I love the outrage that comes when women are saying like, well, shouldn't high value men be allowed to cheat? And I get nailed on this one a bit too. It's like, well, have you ever cheated on your wife? No, I've never cheated on my wife. Well, I guess you're not a high value man. Well, 1 + 1 = 4. 1 + 1 = 2. 1 plus. It's like, well, that's a lifestyle that I chose. I do that by choice, and that's my argument for this. For by the way, for promiscuity versus monogamy is we are promiscuous by nature, but we are monogamous by choice. Because we have to be parentally invested at some point, because that has been the strength of our species for a long time. We have to. Our survival is based on intelligence, be that as it may. And to do so, we have to have big, huge brains. We have to be able to pass those brains through a very small uterus or a vagina or whatever while you're giving birth. And it takes a long time to gestate a human baby, and it takes a long time to raise that baby from birth to self-sufficiency. But that was a strength, and to do so, we needed men to protect women, and we needed men to protect babies. So therefore, those were some things, are the qualities that would make them good providers, good protectors, good fighters, good whatever. Those were the things that got selected for. Now, do we have to have that here in 2021? It doesn't matter, because we're still the same machines that we were when that was very important. That's why we make those choices. So now, the other thing that this gal talked about here and just a while ago was the fact that monogamy benefits beta males, and she's not wrong about that. She wanted to say, well, it's patriarchy. According to her, patriarchy would be the product of beta men. And I thought that was a fascinating, I wrote about it here in the new polyandry, but I found that a fascinating kind of prospect, because I've said in the past that a lot of the products that we have of human civilization, whether it be art or culture or you name it, name the invention, and I can probably trace back through, I don't know how many different degrees, how the guy who invented that did so because he wanted a better life for himself and his family. He wanted to be able to solve his reproductive problem. Maybe he was a nerd and he didn't know, he wanted to write a new computer program, or maybe he wanted to figure out how to do photography, or maybe he wanted to do a new painting style, or whatever it was that motivated him to be something more than he was. Because clearly he wasn't going to be able to be the alpha male that other women wanted to get with. So what do? I got to make myself more valuable than that guy. How do I do that? I can invent things. I'm smarter. I'm creative. I can do things. I might not be pretty, but I can make pretty things. So, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes, depending on the woman, put it this way, it's enough to solve the reproductive problem. Are you going to get 9s and 10s because you are a smart nerd who learned how to write C-Bowl back in the day? Probably not, but it would be enough to reproduce. because we lived in a society that was based on socially enforced monogamy. That is now gone, or it's on its way out, let's just say. Now, a lot of traditionalists would like it for it not to be gone, or would argue against me and then say, oh, it's not gone. But we see it every day. And it's unignorable now that women have gotten to the point where they are more than willing to share an alpha male. The outrage might be there. I would never share a guy. Any woman who would share an alpha male would lacks respect for herself. I talked about that on Sunday. That was as a common refrain. But yet the practice, the medium is the message, right? The practice is women will readily share an alpha male, and they know they might feel indignant about it, but they understand where their bread is buttered. They understand that that's just what they have to do, and in the hopes that perhaps they're going to lock down a high value guy. When you look at Brittany Renner and PJ Washington right now, go look those two characters up. When you look at how we have structured certainly the divorce laws, and what fascinates me is you want to see the conflict between old order ideals versus new order realities. Look no further than the American divorce laws. Look no further than Brittany Renner, of all people, being paid $200,000 a month by basketball player PJ Washington for a child she knew openly that she was going to have to trap PJ Washington. Is he an idiot for doing it? Yes. Probably still very idealistic, and probably just, I wish he would have read my book, right? I wish he would have had some sort of access to good information. He didn't. He fell in the trap. And maybe he did so with his eyes wide open. I don't know. I don't know him personally. But what I'm driving at here is it's not so much the decisions that were made. It was the fact that there's a framework, a social framework that allows that to happen. When I talk about the 10 richest women in the world, every one of them made their money through divorce or heredity, or inheriting it. Their husband died or their dad died. They didn't build that wealth themselves. They didn't make it. They might be in control of it. Ergo, they are the richest women in the world. But when I remember when Mackenzie Bezos and Jeff Bezos were splitting up, the Twitter sphere really wanted to paint her as being this really philanthropic, angel, Mother Teresa of a character. And whether she is or she isn't is sort of irrelevant, because what they were trying to do is draw attention away from the fact that she was going to be one of the I think she's the 5th richest woman in the world, to the tune of $33 billion in a divorce settlement. Brittany Renner making $200,000 off of that's just child support. I don't know what alimony is, but she ended up divorcing PJ Washington within 2 weeks of giving birth, and was very open and very frank about the whole thing. So yeah, I'm sure. It sucks, and he was stupid to do so. But we live in let's say, a social framework, a social order that allows that to happen. So as a result, what does that do to interpersonal relationships between men and women? And how does it affect those human beings who are still essentially the same critters that they were, certainly 10,000 years ago, maybe 200,000, 100,000 years ago? The machine hasn't changed all that much. The desires, the drives, the innate need. You want to know why Brittany Renner was able to make that kind of money? Because the machine hasn't changed. Okay, I guess she looks pretty hot, right? $200,000 a month for 18 years. Should have saw it coming. Yeah, well, the reason why you should have saw it coming is because it's fairly common knowledge that we live in a social order that encourages that kind of exploitation on the part of women. And again, it's not a beat up women. What I want to draw attention to is not so much the women are going to do what they're going to. Not every woman would, but any woman can. Okay, let's just leave it at that. But the fact I want to focus on the framework here, like that it could happen in the first place. But when this gal in the video here is talking about how patriarchy and I don't know why I have to bring up patriarchy, but certainly socially enforced monogamy benefits the most amount of beta males, because it relatively ensures that they will solve their reproductive problem. And I think we're headed for a real tough time coming up soon, because there's going to be a lot of guys who are the beta males who aren't going to get selected, as she said, because we have rearranged and restructured that framework that I was just talking about to only favor women's sexual strategy. The reason why beta males and guys with patriarchal males were able to sort of repress women or to hold them back or to remove those choices was because that patriarchy and socially enforced monogamy served the interests of the most amount of people. And it helped as a buffer against social unrest, against warfare, against beta male guy, black pill guys going and shooting up the town because they can't get their dicks wet. And it's not so much about the sex side of things as it is the desire side of things. It's one thing to, like, there's no such thing as an incel, right? I don't know if you guys have heard me say that before. There's no such thing as an incel. Any guy today can get laid. It's not hard to go and pay for it, but yet we still live in a time where if you're between the ages of 18 and 24 years old, the likelihood of you getting laid is very slim. So it's not so much about access to sex. It's about, what do those guys really want? What kind of reproductive life do they want to have? You can get laid anytime you want. It doesn't mean you're going to reproduce. And I think that probably has something to do with that sort of existential angst that these guys are having. But monogamy used to work. When people say, Rollo, I can't believe you're against marriage. I'm not against marriage. I'm just against the way that we do it now. I'm against $200,000 a month child support from PJ Washington. I'm definitely against that. I'm definitely against the idea that it's an all downside risk for men. But you're never going to see that change until something catastrophic happens, unfortunately. Because for as much as we'd like to think that we're educating women right now, for as much as we'd like to say, oh, we're going to hold women accountable, and they're going to, okay, so we do. Let's just say it all works out, right? I hold them accountable. You hold them accountable. This show here, whatever, holds women's feet to the fire. And what do you expect to happen? Do you think anything's going to change? Do you think that the machine is going to change because you held women accountable? I made this observation, and I'm going to say this here. I'm almost done. I made this observation back in March, and people ran me up the freaking flagpole for this. I said, you know what? There comes a point on these shows, there comes a point in holding women accountable where men reach the point of diminishing returns. You can't reason women into bed. You get to a point where your rational argument is no longer sufficient to solve her emotional problem. That's when you get to who hurt you. That's when you get to, there must be something wrong with you. Tell me what's wrong. Like they want to suddenly, every woman turns into a psychoanalyst at that point. But the reason why, once you get there, that's the point of diminishing returns. And nothing's going to happen and nothing's going to get done because there's enough guys who are ready to simp. There's enough guys who are going to back all this stuff up. There's enough guys who want to participate in what is becoming the new polyamory or polygamy, I guess, the female initiated polygamy. That's where this is going. That's how you get a Nick Cannon, rationalizing the fact that he's had 4 baby mamas. He's got 7 kids. For a high value guy, I'm sure it's a financial issue, but as a father, as being sort of parentally invested in all of them, you want to know why women get jealous? It's not about sexual. Like women will get far less jealous of a man who goes outside the marriage or goes outside the relationship to have sex with a woman, and then that's it, right? They're much more jealous of men who form emotional bonds and fall in love, right, with another woman. That's because that's a loss of investment on a woman's part. For men, if that woman has sex with another guy, that's a genetic, biological thing, and that's why guys want to kill her or kill the guy she was cheating with, like he's getting cuckolded with, because that is his paternity certainty is men's highest order or prime directive in life, at least from a biological sense. That's why that exists. So I think we're headed down a really dark path here. Can we turn it around? Can we change the mind? I don't think so. I don't think so without something that's catastrophic or something that's going to be some sort of social thing, or maybe it's just environmental. Who knows? We're going to get to a point where women are either going to have to wake up and start making choice, like police their own sexual strategy, which I don't see happening, or it's going to have to be policed for them. And That sounds like misogyny. That sounds like patriarchy, but that it is what it is. Men can't solve their reproductive problems using women's sexual strategy. Clearly, that's not going to happen. And the more we try to say that, well, just man up, just make more money. Just, you want to know why the black pill exists? That's why, because that hopelessness comes from the sort of tacit knowledge that they're not going to be able to solve their reproductive problem. So they either have to check out and bug out, or they can commiserate or whatever, or you can get better. Don't wish it were easier, wish it were better. You can build yourself up. And then I realize not all of us can do that. Not all. I'm Quasimodo. I have something physically wrong. I have physical deformities. Whatever. You know, go look at Ricky Berwick. Ricky Berwick, man. Now, is he getting laid like Tile? Probably not. I would gather not. But the guy is funny as hell. And the guy is self-deprecating humor, but the guy is just has done a lot with much less than you have, I guarantee. Is he getting laid? Is he reproducing? Probably not going to do that. But man, he's probably living a good life on his channel and doing exactly what he wants to do, and fuck everyone else. Look up Ricky Berwick. You'll laugh your ass off. He's funny as hell. So that's my show for today. I hate to end on sort of a down note. It's not that I think that we can't do stuff. It's like, it's not that I think that we can't solve these problems. I think we can. I think we lack the willingness to do so. We won't do what we know needs to be done. And unless we get to the point where everything has gone to hell so far that we're like, okay, I guess we have no other choice but to do the things that we need to do. But you're not going to solve new order problems with old order thinking. We have to get to a point where we go, okay, this is the game that I'm playing right now. These are the mechanics. This is men's nature and this is women's nature. Acknowledge that and work within the confines, work within the parameters of that game. Learn to play the game better. Don't get married. Okay, fine. Don't get married. Don't make any investments. But I'll tell you, the surest way to amount to nothing is to never take any risks, right? So there it is. Have a good day. I will see you guys later on. I apologize again. This is an hour-long show, and I'm just gonna cut it off right there. Thanks, guys. I will see you later. Bye-bye.